first noticed the cold when my teeth started clicking while I was brushing my teeth. My jaw was chattering really hard, and I had to stop and steady myself over the sink. I spat, rinsed, and stood there with the tap running, staring at my own face in the mirror. The mirror held a faint haze, even though I had not taken a shower. I walked out into the hallway and checked the thermostat. 75. The heat was on, and I could hear the fan running. I put my hand over the vent in the living room. Warm air came out. So far, so good. It was working. And yet the apartment still felt wrong, as though there was a window left open to let in the draft. I decided to check, starting with the balcony door seal, running my palm along the edges. Nothing. I tried the bedroom window latch next. It was locked tight. Then the front door frame. But I found nothing that explained why the cold stayed on my skin. I told myself it was one of those winter days when the building just hadn't caught up yet, even with the heat running. It was an easy explanation to accept, until I made coffee. I poured it and wrapped my hands around the mug, waiting for that familiar warmth. The mug was hot. I could feel it, but my palms stayed cold anyway, and when I set the mug down, a faint white ring appeared on the table, like breath on glass. I tried wiping it off with my thumb and noticed that it didn't smear. It looked more like frost. I stared at it for a while, then shrugged it off. Then I set the mug back down in the same place, held it there with my hands, and counted to 10. When I lifted it again, the ring was back. I leaned closer and saw tiny crystals forming along the edge, grainy and pale. My first thought was that the table was cold. That didn't hold up because the table was inside a heated apartment. After deciding I had wasted enough time, I pulled my hoodie tighter and went back to work. Working from home usually suits me. No commute, especially with the snow, and I never cared for small talk with other people, be it at work or otherwise. That morning, I couldn't settle. Small things kept pulling at my attention. My fingertips felt numb on the keyboard. The touchpad lagged under my palm. I kept lifting my hand and rubbing it, trying to bring feeling back. Every time I exhaled, my breath showed. That shouldn't be happening. I stood up and went back to the thermostat, put my hand under the vent again, and felt the warm, steady air. Well, this was weird. Why did I still feel cold? I grabbed a blanket from the cupboard, wrapped it around my shoulders, and tried to warm myself. I picked up my phone and called security to send maintenance. When he asked for the reason, I said there was a leak somewhere in my apartment letting in a draft and making the apartment cold. Sean from maintenance arrived about 20 minutes later. He was a big guy and always very polite. I realized what a cliche that was. He stepped inside and looked around. He checked the nearest vent, then the thermostat. "You've got it set to 75?" he asked. "Yeah." He shook his head. "You're trying to cook yourself." "It feels cold," I said, and felt stupid saying so. He checked the apartment thoroughly in the same way I did. The balcony door seal, the bedroom window, the front door frame. "No drafts," he said. "Heat's working. I can take a reading if you want." He pulled out a small infrared thermometer and swept it along the walls, the ceiling, the vent. Walls are normal, ceiling's normal, vent's hot. He spent another couple of minutes looking around and said, "Ma'am, it's really warm in here. The heater is working fine and I couldn't find any leaks. Are you sure you're not coming down with the flu or something?" "I'm fine," I said. He nodded, then asked me to sign the log sheet. "Are you sure you're fine, ma'am?" he asked again. "I'm fine, just..." I stopped mid-sentence as I noticed he was looking at my hands with concern. My knuckles were pale, nearly gray, as if the color had drained out. "Yeah, I might go see a doctor," I said hurriedly. "You take care, ma'am," he said before leaving with the signed log sheet. I went into the bathroom and ran warm water, held my hands under it. The water felt warm, but my fingers didn't change. I turned it hotter. I felt the sting for just a brief second, and then the cold stayed. I pulled my hands away and started to wonder what was happening. As I was looking at them, I noticed a thin line along the side of my index finger. A crack. I pressed my thumb against it. There was no pain, just a dull resistance. When I tried to flex the finger, the movement felt slow and stiff, as though something inside was pushing back. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and stared at my hands, trying to think without letting panic take over. I called my sister. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright as ever. "Hey sis, what's going on?" she asked cheerfully. "Can you come over?" I said immediately. "Are you okay?" she asked, and I could hear the sudden concern in her voice. "It's cold in here. Something's off. I can't really explain it. Please, come soon." "Absolutely," she said quietly. "I'll just get someone to cover my shift and we'll be right over." I said okay and hung up. I went back to the living room and turned on the television. I had a bunch of reports to type up, but I just wasn't feeling up to it. One of the perks of being a freelancer, I could work on my own schedule. Every few minutes, my breath showed again. Each time it did, my attention snapped back to it. How was it possible? It just didn't make sense. After a few minutes, I started to get the feeling the cold had spread. It wasn't just in my hands anymore. Now I felt it in my chest as I realized it was getting harder to breathe. That was when the panic started to set in. I wrapped myself in another blanket and turned the heat up to 80. The heater kicked harder. The apartment warmed, but the cold within stayed. I got up and walked to the kitchen, then pressed my palm flat against the wall just to see what would happen. When I pulled it away, my handprint remained. I touched it. Frost. Every finger was outlined. Even the crease of my palm held for a second before it began to fade. I stared at it until it disappeared. Then I touched my own forearm with my other hand. The skin felt like a soda can pulled straight from the fridge. What the hell? My mind scrambled for explanations. Searching on Google didn't help either. I went back into the bathroom and lifted my shirt a little, facing the mirror. My torso looked pale. The color was gone, drained out evenly. My arms, my face, everything looked just like my knuckles did earlier when I signed the log sheet for Sean. Leaning closer, I saw frost clinging to the fine hair on my arms. It caught the bathroom light and shimmered. I pressed 2 fingers into my stomach. The skin resisted. It felt hard. I tried to pinch it, but my fingers couldn't get a grip. I stepped back from the mirror and took a long breath. The air left my mouth in a thick cloud. Then I heard a soft sound. It was a quiet crackle, like ice settling. It came from my hand. I looked down and saw a second crack branching off the first, spreading in a thin line. My knees gave out, and I ended up sitting on the bathroom floor, my head spinning while my mind tried to make sense of it all. After a while, I gathered my thoughts and decided I needed to get out of the room and wait for my sister, maybe call emergency services as well. I stood and went for the front door. My hand closed around the metal knob, and I felt a weird sensation. When I pulled, it didn't turn. I tried again, but nothing. I could feel a tingling on my skin and realized realized that my skin was getting frozen to the metal knob. I yanked my hand free. The sound it made was wet and wrong, and for a brief moment, I thought my skin might just tear off. A thin layer of frost coated the knob now. My palm burned with delayed pain, nerves finally catching up. I tried again, using my sleeve as a barrier, but the door still wouldn't open. It wasn't just the knob. The seam around the door had changed. The narrow gap along the frame was packed with ice now, moisture frozen solid where the door met the wall. I stepped back and bumped into the hallway wall. Cold spread into it where my shoulder touched, leaving a darkened patch that slowly crept outward. The hallway light flickered once. I stood there for a couple of minutes, trying not to let my thoughts run ahead of what was actually happening. Getting to the couch took more effort now. My joints felt stiff and heavy, like they weren't quite keeping up with me anymore. I picked up my phone and tried to type. My fingers moved, but not where I wanted them to. The screen kept slipping under my thumb. I managed to call my sister again. She answered right away, out of breath. "I'm below your building," she said. "I'm coming up now. What's going on in there?" "I can't open the door," I said. The words felt slow leaving my mouth. "What do you mean you can't open it?" "The door's frozen," I said. "Wait, let me come up," she said, and the line went dead. I could picture her running up the stairs instead of waiting for the lift. A couple of minutes later, I heard her footsteps in the hallway, fast and uneven. She called my name, then swore under her breath. "The handle is freezing," she said through the door. "There's ice all around the frame. What's going on, sis?" "Don't touch it." I tried to shout, but my voice came out thin and uneven. My phone buzzed again somewhere near me. I knew it was my sister, but I didn't have the strength to reach for it. I wanted to tell her not to touch anything. Not the knob, not the door, and definitely not me. The cold that was inside me was now spreading outward to whatever I touch. But no words came through. My tongue felt thick. When I finally did reach for the phone, it slipped from my hand and hit the floor. I tried to pick it up. My fingers curved, but they didn't close. The cracks had spread across my knuckles and the backs of my hands. It now felt like I was fighting a losing battle. My skin had a dull sheen to it, smooth and hard. As I looked at my hands, the song by Foreigner drifted into my head. The line where he says, "You're as cold as ice." I let out a short, breathless laugh at the irony of the situation. I could feel a heavy tiredness settling into me. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Frost crept outward from the vent above me, spreading slowly. The heater was still running. I could hear it working, but it was going to have a hard time fixing the temperature now. The sound of my sister knocking reached me again, muffled and distant, like it was coming through a thick wall. "Can you hear me?" she called. I tried to answer, but I just couldn't. Her voice began to fade away as I could feel my senses dulling. I thought I heard keys. Did she call the building security? There was a faint scrape at the lock, then nothing. No click or movement. Just the quiet and the song in my head. "You're as cold as ice." My eyes drifted to the coffee table. The mug was still there. The frost ring beneath it had thickened into a solid circle of ice, smooth and unbroken. I watched it as my vision started to blur and my breathing started to slow. I didn't feel panic at the end. I felt cold, and the cold felt steady, like it had always been there, just waiting for the rest of me to catch up. The last thing I remember is thinking about my sister standing on the other side of the door, her hand near the handle, feeling the unnatural chill that was emanating from inside the apartment.